Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to The Audio Analyst. If you follow the channel, you'll recall that I traveled to Aalborg, Denmark to cover Audio Group Denmark's flagship world premiere launch event, the Symphony of Innovation. At that event, held on Thursday, February 12th, at Aalborg's celebrated The House of Music, we were introduced to their two newest flagship products, the Børresen M8 Gold Signature loudspeaker and their Aavik M880 mono black amplifiers. Now, I presented that launch event with episode 257 back in February, and it is linked in today's description for those who missed it. Each of the remarkable M8 loudspeakers is made up of three separate modules, two mirror-imaged bass modules, one lower and one upper, with a single mid-range treble module positioned between them. Now, each of the two bass modules employs 6 of the Børresen Iron-Free 8 Gold Signature 8-inch drivers for a total of 12 woofers per channel. The central module houses two Børresen Iron-Free 5 Gold Signature 5-inch mid-range drivers, one above and one below the central single Børresen RP94 Gold Signature ribbon planar tweeter. Standing 7 1/4 feet tall, over 25 inches wide and some 32.5 inches deep, each one tips the scales at over 715 pounds. The M8s would be biamplified using 4 of the new flagship Aavik M880 monoblocks, which would also be making their world premiere at this event. Now, the M880s do not use the proprietary modified Pascal UMAC Class D amplifier modules found in lower-tier Aavik models. Instead, they represent a significant shift in design philosophy for Audio Group Denmark, featuring a reimagined dynamic Class A output stage. Each M880 develops 400 watts into 8 ohms or 800 watts into 4 ohms, with a total harmonic distortion rating of just 0.007%. Each M880 stands some 32 inches tall, 13.5 inches wide, is 20 inches deep, and weighs over 150 pounds. The M880 incorporates a sliding bias system that aims to allow it to maintain a forward bias that is consistently 0.63 volts above the required current draw throughout the signal cycle to deliver this reimagined Class A performance. As you may expect, the M880 design also integrates the signature and Zeus technologies, including active Tesla coils, analog dither technology, and anti-aerial resonance coils. Then, too, the M880 uses 4 high-frequency switch-mode power supplies instead of a linear supply or a more traditional standard mode Class D switching supply. Their high-frequency resonant mode application generates sinusoidal oscillations or sine waves rather than square waves to both reduce the electrical noise and to dynamically adjust its frequency to match musical demand. As a brief aside, this sliding bias approach to managing a Class A circuit is not new. In fact, Nelson Pass developed and patented the first popular and commercially successful sliding bias Class A amplifier in 1975 with the introduction of the Threshold Model 800A, a product that I came to know quite well as a threshold dealer. But since that time, many manufacturers have applied versions of this sliding bias or dynamic Class A technique, including companies like Nakamichi, Forte, Krell, Plinius, Sugden, Symphonic Line, Karen, and even certain Mark Levinson models like the number 33. Westminster Lab, with their Ray amplifiers, also joins Aavik as one of today's more high-profile manufacturers, leveraging this technique. I will admit that I have some difficulty with these sliding bias designs being described as pure Class A. Why? Because that language blurs a meaningful distinction, the difference between a fixed current source and a continuously variable dynamic current source. And that matters because these dynamic designs are reactive by nature. The dynamic bias must follow the signal. It cannot anticipate it. There is no mechanism by which the circuit can perfectly predict incoming changes before they occur, so the bias is always tracking the drive signal rather than existing independently of it. While I freely recognize the distinct advantages these designs offer by providing the primary sonic benefits of Class A operation, that of running entirely in the linear region of the devices, avoiding the related switching distortions, and minimizing the wasteful, crippling heat that can be generated by a pure Class A design, I just would prefer we acknowledge that they are a hybrid Class A, not pure Class A. That said, I want to relate what the more revealing and remarkable listening session that the following day's trip to the Audio Group Denmark headquarters and factory, my second visit to that facility, allowed me to experience. That Friday, February the 13th no less, was spent at Audio Group Denmark headquarters, just 2 miles south of the House of Music, located in a more industrial area of Aalborg. As we arrived, we were greeted by AGD co-founder and CSO Lars Christensen, who then conducted a detailed tour of the roughly 25,000 square foot facility. As well as the company's business offices, it also houses the engineering, development, and assembly areas for each of their 4 brands: Anzus, Aavik, Access, and Børresen Acoustics, their cryogenic treatment facilities, several specialized listening rooms and demo rooms, including the Supreme Suite, and a well-appointed and stocked Irish pub. Beginning much earlier on that same Friday morning, a dedicated AGD team had already undertaken the Herculean task of disassembling and moving the massive pair of M8s and the 4 M880 amplifiers from their installation on the stage of the House of Music's lower concert hall back to AGD Central and reassembling, installing, and carefully dialing them in their showcase listening space, the Supreme Suite. This prime listening space at the factory measures roughly 40 feet wide by 25 feet deep and some 10.5 feet tall, and this heroic system was configured along one of its long walls. If you've ever witnessed an AGD system demo, you will know that this long wall setup is not only their preferred setup, but it is, in fact, their signature setup configuration. The rest of the Supreme Suite system included more of Aavik's flagship 880 series of products, the SD880 Streamer DAC and the C880 preamplifier. Because the M8s are designed to be used with an external active crossover, when used in a biamp system with the new Aavik M880 monoblocks, their bass section can be perfectly aligned with the midrange and treble. Using Anzus Gold Signature level cabling throughout, their noise reduction devices, switches, power distributors, and Darks and Sorts resonance control products, this was a no-compromise installation. With this extraordinary system fully reassembled, properly warmed up, and playing music in the Supreme Suite, visitors to the factory that day were able to audition favorite musical selections under conditions that were dramatically more favorable than those of the previous day's theatrical launch. And that matters. As visually impressive and sonically compelling as the lower concert hall demonstration had been previously, the setup itself imposed clear limitations. The audience had been seated relatively low in the folding chairs on the hall floor, while the speakers were positioned high on the stage. As a result, the M8 Gold Signature's mid-range tweeter array was situated well above the ear level of the seated listeners, preventing that module from delivering its optimum presentation. Do not misunderstand me. It was a striking and memorable demonstration. But given the physical realities of that setup, the system was clearly not able to deliver its absolute best. Starting with the system's musical foundation, the bass, I would suggest that the recent development and release of the Børresen Bass Module 3, which I covered on the channel last September in episode 243, may well have been the final breakthrough that Michael and Audio Group Denmark needed to fully realize the singular statement that is the M8 Gold Signature. The M8's 12 custom 8-inch drivers are divided into dual groups of 6, forming upper and lower folded dipole bass modules that radiate energy forward and backward with opposite polarity and play from about 20 Hz up to 250 Hz. In practical terms, this controlled radiation pattern helps reduce unwanted room interaction and reflections. Combined with powerful iron-free motor systems and a total radiating area greater than that of 3 15-inch woofers, the M8 is capable of bass transients of exceptional speed and precision. The result gives the M8's effortless scaling, remarkably defined and resolute pitch definition, and an impressive low-frequency performance that is punchy, articulate, and finely detailed, not just loud. As someone who lives with world-class loudspeakers capable of regenerating frequencies well below audibility, down into the 15 Hz region, I can confirm that the M8's bass transient response is not only exceptionally refined and superbly agile, but that it is capable of rendering incredibly lifelike presence, smoothness, and finesse. And their linear extension and control are simply outstanding, offering a measure of performance that is considerably beyond a level that most listeners will have ever experienced. The M8's 2 Børresen Iron-Free 5 Gold Signature mid-range drivers use advanced carbon fiber membranes reinforced with graphene and boron whiskers, materials selected to increase rigidity while minimizing mass and breakup, and they cover the 250 Hz to 2500 Hz region. They are paired with the company's iron-free motor system, which is intended to reduce magnetic hysteresis and improve responsiveness. In addition, the Anzus Gold Signature treatment includes vapor deposition of titanium and other exotic nitrides. The sonic result is a mid-range that is superbly expressive, dimensional, and immediate. Voices and instruments are presented with dramatic speed, excellent definition, and a remarkable sense of transparency, allowing recordings to sound remarkably open. This region is reproduced with a spacious, organic character that presents performers with a palpable presence, while tonal color, tactile texture, and harmonic bloom are conveyed with a relaxed but vivid sense of coherence and naturalness, recording permitting. The upper frequency performance leverages the exemplary performance envelope of their RP94 signature ribbon, operating efficiently from 2500 Hz upward, delivering a surprisingly wide, detailed frequency response with unwavering stability and remarkably low distortion. It offers exceptional resolution of fine musical detail while providing lightning-fast, transient response. Across all of my listening, regardless of musical selection or playback level, this tweeter never turned bright, brittle, or edgy. It consistently sounded smooth, immersive, and naturally textured, though I occasionally wondered whether it routinely delivered the same level of openness, of unfettered extension that I experience with other flagship loudspeakers. What had become immediately obvious in this far more suitable listening space was the system's sheer resolving power and the transparency to the music that allowed. If you follow the channel and my reporting, you know that in my examinations of several other flagship loudspeakers, including the von Schweikert Audio Ultra 11 and my Ultra 9 Foundations, the Magico M9, the Vivid Audio Moya M1, and the Børresen Acoustics M3 and M6, I have documented dramatic gains in loudspeaker resolution several times over the last several years. And while we're at it, what is it with so many of these benchmark loudspeakers having the names that begin with the letter M? Another major strength was dynamic performance. And here, the M8 system was simply astonishing. Its explosive force, combined with its sense of ease and ability to scale convincingly across every musical genre, were as impressive as anything I have heard. Transients arrived with such speed, definition, and clean delineation, broadband, that the presentation began to approach the physical authority of live music. Just as importantly, the system was equally adept at expressing the smaller, dynamic gradations that give music life, the tiny inflections, shifts in emphasis, and subtle expressive cues that define microdynamic nuance. One of my musical litmus tests is the 1972 London recording of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Sir George Solti. Through this system, the layering of the soundstage, the scale of the images, and the individuality of massed instrumental and vocal forces were rendered with exceptional perspective. During the closing of the Ode to Joy, not only could you discern the distinct identities and locations of the four soloists, but it even presented the subtle differences in their relative height within the sound field, a feat that only a very small number of loudspeakers available today can approach, much less equal. The effect was so striking that several other engaged listeners in the Supreme Suite, some who freely admitted that they were not normally drawn into classical music, openly recognized all these sonic attributes. In fact, the only shortcoming I noted during this entire session was a somewhat shallow front-to-back soundstage. Nothing was projected perceptibly deeper than the front wall of the Supreme Suite, the wall behind the loudspeakers. I do not regard this as a limitation of the Børresen Acoustics M8 Gold Signature or any of the associated electronics. I know this because I had heard the same restriction with every loudspeaker I've ever auditioned in that space, including many other speakers during my first visit. Rather, it is a known limitation of the implementation of the long wall setup approach. Because long wall setups place both the loudspeakers and the listener considerably closer to each of the front and rear room boundaries, it also contributes to more complex, harder to manage room modes. This exacerbates speaker boundary interference response issues, compounding the relationships and interactions between the direct sound from the loudspeakers, between the direct sound from the loudspeaker and its reflections from all nearby boundaries, including the walls, ceiling, and floor. The reward of this long wall placement can be a larger, more expansive presentation, but at the cost of reduced soundstage depth, lower spatial specificity, and a smaller, less stable sweet spot. Even so, once you hear the exceptional coherence, tonal sophistication, textural richness, extension at both frequency extremes, its dynamic expressiveness, effortless scale, fine resolution, underlying sense of authenticity, and revel in its deeply realistic you are there experience, a fuller understanding of the power of these products begins to emerge. These guys have been pushing limits and implementing unique technologies like passive and active Tesla coils, analog dithering, anti-aerial resonance coils, and cryo treatment right from their roots. With the introduction of these new flagship products, the M8 and the M880s, they secure their position among an elite group of artisan audio components that collectively push existing limitations and boundaries. As well established as the AGD brands have become, from their entry-level, overachieving access products through the flagship Aavik M series of electronics and Børresen Acoustics M series of loudspeakers, these simply amazing new machines' introduction merely solidifies their position at the highest level of fine audio production today. My thanks to Audio Group Denmark for the opportunity to attend these world premiere events, allowing me to experience and to be able to share firsthand the extraordinary sonic capabilities these pioneering products have achieved. As always, thank you for taking the time to drop by today. Further information on supporting the channel and my efforts may be found in today's description section or at my companion website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.